Okay. Turn that away. All right. I need my glasses. Much better. Oh. All right. Hello, namaste, and welcome, my brothers and sisters. More importantly, thank you so much for joining me once again. I want to clear up a few things before we get rolling today. In the beginning of the previous recording, you heard me talking about editing. You heard me say, "Oh, I can cut that out later. We can always edit, etc." Originally, I had planned to rehearse what I've written and then to edit the video, but the truth is, it didn't take me long to realize this, that who you saw and who you heard is just who I am. you know and besides that point, we don't have any time for me to waste trying to make it nice and pretty and perfect. And by the way, that was my first recording ever, and my first experience in public speaking. So here's what happened: I changed my mind. As soon as I was done, I uploaded it the way it was, so it was no mistake that you got the uncut raw footage. um if we're going to be hanging out together, then, like everybody else in my life, you deserve nothing less than me being who I am and not holding back out of fear that that you might not like what I say, or like the way I say it, or that I might do something that you disapprove of. What you saw is who I am. And that is all I can ever be. That is all I ever want to be. Imperfections and all. Which, by the way, when I say imperfections and all, I'm only saying it for the benefit of you understanding what I'm talking about. Because the reality is that, they're not imperfections to me. They're just who I am. And I'm not going to try to hide that. I'm not going to try to hide myself. I'm more ashamed of myself by denying who I truly am than anything I might do that someone might judge me for. This message is not about who I am. This message is about who we are. You also heard me say that either people are going to love me or they're not. I said, fuck them. And that it's not that I'm indifferent or that I don't care. I do. But I cannot control how others will think about me. The only thing that I can control is about how I feel about myself. And it feels good to be me. It feels good to be natural and to be honest. So that's all I'm ever going to do. And I'm not going to apologize for it. So from this day on, know that the uncut raw footage is all you're ever going to get. Also, I'm not going to apologize for fumbling the ball a little bit here and there. This is not a professionally edited video. As you can see, I'm not in the studio, but I am doing my best with the resources I have at the moment, because this message needs to get out as fast as possible. As fast as I can spit it out, that's how fast the world needs to hear it. Do not focus on how I'm delivering the message. I'm fucking emotional. I'm fucking hyper. This is just me relaxing. So don't focus on how I'm delivering this message. Focus on the message itself, because the message and not how I deliver it is what's going to make all the difference in the world in how much you get out of our time together. I'm going to be reading from notes from the speech I've prepared in front of me. I'm going to be ad libbing here and there. I'll reread something if I have to that I didn't emphasize right, or I got the words wrong. And sometimes, if things come to me like a random thought and I have to stick it in there, or I have to backtrack a little bit, it is what it is. That's it. It is what it is. You know, Let me clear something else up as well. when I say things like by the end of this video, right here, right now, today, I'm talking about all the videos it's going to take to get to the end. I don't know how many videos that's going to be. I'm doing them in 2 or so hours at a pop. I will say again, part of the price is patience. We have a ton of material to get through. A rough estimate, I don't know. This it'll be this video that you're listening to now, and maybe one or two more. I really don't know. I thought it was going to be around 4.5 hours, but it looks like it's going to be a total of maybe 6.5 or maybe even 8. Who knows? From zero to enlightenment in 8 hours or so, it's not bad. Considering that many people spend their lifetimes in meditation trying to get it, trying to achieve something like this, and many people either they never do, or I would say the majority of people out there, they never even know that this option is even available to them. So, moving on. Let's hold on a second. Let's recap where we are so far. So, what most of you will get, bare bones minimum, is the loss of all your suffering, or at the very least, a good chunk of it, like right away. Um, the more and more you realize that the things you'll learn here are true, the faster your suffering will disappear until it's gone altogether. The moment that you realize what has been causing it, you are not only, look, you're not going to believe how easy it is to shut it down. And when you shut it down, the flip side of that coin, you're also not going to believe how amazing it truly is to not have that shit in your life. So let's get back to work. Before we go any further, there are two questions that I'm going to address now that I know are very important at this point. And those two questions are these. Number one, who am I? Number two, what qualifies me to make these claims that I can bring you to this place, to this thing that we've been talking about? So, who am I? Ah, the eternal question. The eternal answer? I don't know. So, instead, let me share with you a few of the experiences that I've had in my life this far to give you a better of an understanding of, of who exactly I am, or exactly why I'm compelled to invite any and all seekers to join me on this incredible journey I'm talking about. Once again, my name is B, which is short for Bad Boy Buddha. Stop right there. What is Bad Boy Buddha? What does that mean? Let me tell you. Hey. I've been a bad boy all my life, and I don't mean that in a good way. Since the third grade at PS 122 in Astoria, Queens, I was known as a problem child, which basically stemmed from being physically and mentally abused at home. I never graduated the sixth grade, but I did leave behind a record of assault, extortion, blackmail, theft, destruction of school property, and sexual deviance. Let me explain the sexual deviance. What I mean by that is when I was in fifth grade, in the back of the school auditorium, all right, I got three girls, Connie, Avita, and Maria. Don't ask me how I did it, but I talked them into playing strip blackjack with me. What they didn't know was that I had set up the deck of cards to win every time. Needless to say, in a very short amount of time, I had all three girls down to their socks and underwear. Okay? So, right before Connie is about to take off her bra, my fifth grade teacher, Mrs. Apt, ABT, I had a crush on her. Mrs. Apt, she walks in on us. She screamed, okay? She told the girls to put on their clothes. She looked at me, then she screamed my name red with fury and told me to report to the principal's office. And mind you, by the fifth grade, I could get to Dr. Jerkinoff's office blindfolded from virtually anywhere in that school, okay? I stabbed the kid with a pencil once. Till this day, he had it coming to him. Kids can be cruel, and I got teased a lot. Why? Well, poverty is a badge of shame and ridicule. Not that my father didn't have the money. He made a decent living. He had, a wife and, not my mother, and 5 other kids on the side, you know? Now, as if wearing secondhand Salvation Army clothes and black pleather shoes with holes in them, okay, with holes in the soles, if that wasn't bad enough, you know, me and my brother, we used to, on our way to school, when we went down the stairs of the apartment building, we used to sit down and we used to get the supermarket flyers and we used to put them in our shoes. And when it rained, which was for some fucking reason, always on gym day, not that that mattered much because we weren't allowed to participate without sneakers on the gym floors. So what that meant is there I am, standing there in these handmade gym shorts and holy black shoes that left a trail of little wet pieces of paper everywhere I walked, You know? They used to call me keyholes, because we had holes in our shoes. They used to say I had holy shoes. Anyway, my father, he had this thing. He would change our food menu every 30 days or so. You know, sometimes 3 times a day for what seemed to be like a month at a time. It was either jelly and egg sandwiches, fucking disgusting. Which actually, I got to tell you, I don't think I've ever had a sandwich like that again. Jelly and eggs. Liverwurst and Wonder Bread. All right, liverwurst and Wonder Bread. I still can't stand the smell of it, and that fucking oatmeal. Let me tell you something. One day during oatmeal month, me and my brothers were sitting at the table for breakfast, and I just can't do it anymore. I can't eat it. My father says to me, Robert, you are either going to eat that oatmeal or you're going to wear it to school. Needless to say, he dragged my ass 3 blocks to school wearing that fucking oatmeal, and he walked me into my classroom with it. That was not a good day, you know. In a rage once, which was common for me, I threw another kid, Gus, who had it coming to him too, down a flight of stairs. I almost killed that kid. I'm not proud of this. 15 years later, I went back to that school to get some records, and the school guards, they stopped me at the door, and they treated me like I had walked in there with a bomb strapped to my chest. They escorted me in, and they escorted me out, and they told me next time, send an envelope. Until this day, I am still no longer allowed on that school's premises. Same thing with Long Island City High School, by the way. So my father, one day, he just split. He left my mother battered and seriously mentally ill, straitjacket, mentally ill. My 2 brothers and me. He left us in a 1 bedroom apartment with no electricity, or rather, stolen electricity. No food, no money, and an eviction notice on the front door. My grandfather, a lifelong factory worker, came to our rescue. The only feasible way to stretch the less than $2 an hour that he was earning was to send us to the Dominican Republic, where Grandma lived, in one of the 2 houses that they owned on a small piece of property. As a kid in the DR, I was known as El Terror, or the Terror. My grandmother, God rest her soul, used to call me in Spanish. She was Dominican. She used to call me Muchacho del Diablo, which means the devil's child or spawn of Satan. Take your pick. you know, I wrote something a few years ago that you could call an abridged version of my autobiography, where you can get more details on that story. I'll tell you where to get it later on. But for now, long story short, all right? American kid already fucked in the head in a foreign country that hates Yankees. Hold on a second. They hated us, man. I didn't know a word of Spanish. I put up with a lot of shit. I got my ass kicked almost daily. I often tell this joke that the way I learned Spanish was these little Dominican kids, kicking the shit out of me and cursing at me in Spanish. You know, like a puta, Yankee, mamaguel, all that shit. Anyway, I got kicked out of every school they put me in, or just flat out didn't go. I had a severely diabetic grandmother and a mother who was, gone half the time. It is what it is. Um, so that meant that I had no supervision and no one to answer to. A lot of people said that I was just going through a phase, and they were right. All right. Phase one, I started smoking, drinking, stealing, riding motorcycles, and getting laid by the age of 15. I was smoking weed every day, rarely home, and my two best friends were a juvenile delinquent named Edgar and a convict, not an ex convict, an escaped on the run convict named Arimendi. He wore a cast on his leg because he was shot escaping from jail. Okay? Arimendi taught me a lot of things, especially how to hustle and how to steal on a whole new level. All this by age 17. Then I did something, I was out of control. My whole family, my cousins, aunts, uncles, they couldn't handle me anymore. And they figured that if I stayed in the DR, that I would end up either in jail or dead, either of which would have killed my mother and my grandmother. So my godparents, they sent me back to New York to live with my tia Flower, my grandfather, my older brother Gil, twin, and my mother's aunt. I was told to leave 2 weeks later. So before my 18th birthday, I found myself homeless for the first time on the streets of New York City. Phase two. With my Dominican Republic training in hand, I did what I knew how to do. It didn't take me long to find friends. I slept anywhere I could, shelters, parks, subways, under the staircases of the nastiest apartment buildings you can imagine. I made my living, uh, by the way, not a very good one, um, gambling, stealing, hustling. I was doing drugs on a whole new level. Now it was cocaine, freebasing, and any drug I could get my hands on. Black beauties, Valiums, Quaaludes, mescaline, crack, you name it. Oh yeah, and pretty much having sex with anything that moved. All right. Most New Yorkers, they have a coffee and a buttered roll for breakfast. Man, listen, 6 months after my 18th birthday, my breakfast was a dime bag two of weed, 5 to 10 shots of Jack Daniels, and at the least a half a gram of Coke and a pack of cigarettes. And those were the good old days. Phase three. From ages 19 to 22, life got real. Crazy. Okay? I gotta say, I made some interesting new friends in the 80s. Among them were Colombian drug dealers, several Greek drug dealers, and many Italian drug dealers. Let's just say that they were extremely colorful, religious individuals. In other words, holy shit. Okay? I was really close to one guy. His name was Gus. Not the same Gus. I knew him for almost 2 years, and I had to end our relationship abruptly when I found out he was a fucking undercover DEA agent. My hand to God, he was sent in to befriend me to get to the guys I knew. The night that I found out who he was, I went to pick him up at his apartment to take him to a 5 kilo buy that I had set up. I was going to make 3,000 a key, 15,000 cold hard cash. All right. So here's what happened. I walked into his apartment. Right. He was taking a shower. I had keys to his place. All right. He was taking a shower, and I said, Gus, I'm here. He said, hey, listen, help yourself to a couple of lines, on the dresser. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I go into his bedroom, and there it is, mountain of coke, right? So I'm taking a couple of fucking hits, right? And I see that he's got two wallets on his dresser. And for some reason, man, I had this thought in my head. I said to myself, I need a wallet. He's got two. He probably just bought a new one and he's going to throw one out. Let me find out which one it is and I'll ask him for it, right? So I pick up the wallet. I pick up the first wallet I pick up. I open it. DEA. Let me tell you something, man. I got out of there and I got out of there quick. All right? I ran to the closest phone and I called my people and I told them the heat is on. That was just the code we had, that it was over. If we made that call, it meant, all right, that we had just found out that they were after us in any way, whoever was after us. Anyway, if something or someone hadn't been looking out for me that night, I would have spent almost 15 years behind bars. And when I say almost 15 years behind bars, because the guys that would have gotten pinched that night would have never let that happen. I wasn't going to live 15 days, much less 15 years. Pretty glamorous, right? Before it all came crashing down on me, man, and it did. Most of it was fun. It was, you know, but in the end, every one of those people that I just mentioned, every one of them were looking for me, and they were looking for me. I pissed all of them off at the same time. This phase ended with me sitting on the floor of a dirty motel room on Astoria Boulevard, right across the street from LaGuardia Airport. There I sat for a really long time, crying like a baby and shaking like a leaf. I was out of my mind, terrified. I had never been so scared in my life. I was in a lot of trouble with a lot of bad people. I didn't know if I was going to end up wearing a Colombian necktie or chopped up in pieces in one of Cheese's sanitation trucks. All right. Either by the grace of God or by sheer luck, I was able to skip town alive and free. And while my bad boy days were over, and I said this before, they weren't. Okay. That's not true. You know, by no means was my life smooth sailing from there on out. For more details on that, you can go to badboybuddha.com and click on the About Me tab, and you'll find the autobiography there. I've been told it's quite entertaining. It's pretty funny, and you could read it in about 30 or 40 minutes or so, and I have it on an audio file as well that you can download about an hour and a half. Um, so moving on. Bad boy, check. Now you know, okay? I got to tell you, every time I think of my past, it gives me the chills, man, because I got away with a lot of shit. But on a much lighter and much more positive note, if you'll call it that, Buddha. Translation, the enlightened one. There are three reasons why I've taken that name. My education, two, my achievement, three, because of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how I'm doing. All right. Why Buddha? Reason number one, my education. Okay. On a formal level, you already know. I graduated the fifth grade. That's it. Later on in life, because I needed it for truck driving school, I got myself a GED. After more than a few miserable years driving a truck over the road, I got a local trucking job moving furniture in New York City. One day, as my body smelled of Bengay, which my mother used to put all over the back of my body, I decided to do something else. I said to myself, I picked up a copy of the Daily News or the New York Post, and I read an ad in the paper that said, quote, make $1 million, no experience, no education needed, end quote. I remember saying these words exactly. Holy shit, that's so me. You know, it was an ad for a stockbroker trainee. I called the 800 number, then I called in sick at my regular job, and I went to the interview the very next day. I met this guy, a paisan named Joey. I should have known right there, that this wasn't going to end well. So he's an ex truck driver, just like me, and he said, and I quote, yo, I'm a fucking moron and I can do it. End quote. So he showed me. Then what he did was he showed me his last 3 monthly paychecks. All I remember right now is that one of them was for over $36,000 take home after taxes. That was a Friday. I quit my truck driving job on that day and started at the firm on Monday. Now, doing that job, selling stock, which by the way, I didn't even know what the fuck a stock was, much less how to sell it to strangers over a telephone, right? That that experience was what got me started on my lifelong journey of self-education and self-help. Starting in 1994 and since, I have read and reread hundreds, if not 1,000 books or more on self-development, sales, and building relationships. None of them which, by the way, did anything to help my career in the stock market. But I learned a lot. Most of all, the most important thing that I learned was that I felt better about myself, you know, the more I read, the more I learned. Professionally, though, after 7, almost 8 years trying to make $1 million as a stockbroker, I found myself broke and brokenhearted. You know, I'd gotten in on the wrong end of the business. I got in on what I came to find out was the boiler room end of it. Incidentally, there are several characters, main characters, in the movie that recently came out called The Wolf of Wall Street, that not only did I know them, but I also, in fact, worked for them. And eventually, I figured this much, that after being able to stay out of jail for as long as I had, after everything I'd done in my life, if I didn't quit when I did, that jail is where I would have ended up. As a matter of fact, every brokerage firm I worked for pretty much was shut down by the NASD and the SEC. One of them was raided 2 weeks after I had left. I know personally over 200 people that I worked with and or for that ended up behind bars for what they were doing. You know, at the time, my mother, my mother was back from Dominican Republic. You know, and she was doing okay, man. For what it's worth. And I knew that because she loved me, she loved all of us. If I ended up in the joint, oh man, it would have literally broken her heart or sent her back to the loony bin. And honestly, man, it would have killed her. And I couldn't live with that, man. That's all I thought about. So I did what I knew how to do. I went back into a large car, or a big truck, or a tractor trailer for you four wheelers, you know, and I hit the road. And for the most part, I've been doing that ever since. Now, driving a truck over the road, you have so much time to think, man. And for a really long time, all I thought every day, day after day, was about the 8 years of my life that I wasted pursuing and telling everyone of this dream of becoming a millionaire. At that point, my life was a pit of total fucking depression. But worse than the regret, than the misery, the suffering, and the heartbreak was the desperation and the fear that I experienced that this is how I would spend my life, a fucking failure, and I would never be able to do anything about it. One morning, I remember this as if it was today. I was driving through the Tennessee mountains and I was having a really ugly, yet romantically suicidal conversation with myself. Specifically, I was I imagined what it would be like to drive my truck off that fucking mountain that I was on and into this beautiful foggy sunrise that I was staring at. Then I had another thought. I thought, hmm, what if I drive my truck into a bridge support at top speed with my seatbelt off? The visuals were amazing and very specific down to the last detail of what it would possibly look like. How would I be found? Would it hurt? Would it hurt others in the process? And even worse, what if it didn't work at all? What if I just ended up mangled or a vegetable for the rest of my life? You know? And then in the middle of this conversation, this stupid conversation, I heard the following words. And I remember this because this is extremely significant for you for later on. So listen carefully. I heard these words: Robert, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then again, Robert, what the fuck are you talking about? And immediately having those two thoughts, hearing those two thoughts, all of a sudden, it was like a movie screen. I started thinking about all the things I had been through in my life. And I said to myself these words exactly. I'll never forget them. I said, fuck that shit. I ain't going out that way. This is totally unacceptable. And there is no way I'm doing it. No way. Just like that. That's when, a little more colorful than that, but whatever. That is when I made the decision that because of it, I am here talking to you right now. And that decision was this. I figured that since I would be stuck in the middle, stuck in that truck for God only knows how long and with no end in sight, that I would make the most of it. And I would continue to educate myself and read. It was just like this power all of a sudden I felt that if I read as many books as possible, that I would figure it out, whatever that meant. Now, many times in the past, people have asked me, what college did you go to? What university? And I reply with this. I tell them I went to the Freightliner University, sorry, the International University, because Freightliner and International are the makes of the trucks I spent so much time learning about life in. This journey began more than 20 years ago. I listened and I read books on tape, on CD, in the last 4 or 5 years on DVD, digital audio books, and electronic books. But the real changes in my life, the ones that brought me to enlightenment, to where I am now, they didn't really start happening until 5 years ago when I found myself in a serious, life threatening situation. I started looking for answers to the experience I'd had, which we'll talk about later. But for now, what you need to know is that I have spent the better part of the last 5 years, more than that, studying metaphysics, religion, exclusively metaphysics, religion, spirituality, studying about the universe, the laws of intention, the laws of attraction, the art of allowing, etc. I have read and or listened to well over 400 books on those subjects alone. Many, if not the majority of those books, I have read more than once. And in many, many cases, I have read individual books dozens of times over. I really wanted to get the content because they changed my life in such immense ways. I will have a partial list of them on my website soon, and I I intend to continue adding to them for many, many years to come. I'm going to mention a few of them here, just a few of my absolute favorites that still, till this day, I continue to study these books on a daily basis. Always. Um, I can't get tired of reading them and rereading them. Every single time I do, I get something new. I gain a profundity that truly cannot be expressed in these simple words that we use to communicate as human beings. So, first and foremost, the love of my life. It is a book that Mahatma Gandhi studied it every day, and he lived his life by it. Many scholars and many influential people in the history of our world have also lived by it and still do. That book is called the Bhagavad Gita. Also in my collection, among many others. All right, I have a short list here. I'm gonna read it more like breeze through it, just to give you an idea of the marvelous teachers that will soon be your very own. And the fact is, they're your teachers right now. They are my counsel. Napoleon Hill taught me in this method of having a council, a board of advisors. Every time I have a problem, in fact, almost every decision I make in my life, I think to myself, if this or that person were alive, based on what I know about them, what would they say to me? How would they handle it? And trust me, there's more power there than you can imagine. The list: the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Rig Vedas, the Upanishads, the Guru Granth Sahib, the Tao Te Ching, the I Ching, Authors like Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, Meister Eckhart, Plato, and Aristotle, who wrote about Socrates, Leo Tolstoy, Ram Dass, Rumi, St. Francis of Assisi, Jesus Christ. Emerson, Thoreau, Einstein, Sri Ramana Maharshi, Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, Gandhi, Buddha, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, um, Dr. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and so many more. So many more. Um, and yes, by the way, the Holy Bible, the Quran, the Torah, we could do this all day long, but I think that by now you get the point. All right. You will often hear me, as you already have, you'll hear me quoting from these texts and from these authors. So that is my education. Why Buddha? Reason number two, my achievement. Notice that I said achievement, not plural. Not plural. Because in fact, there's only one achievement that I'm going to talk about because it is really the only one that truly matters. As a matter of fact, it's the only accomplishment that I have that makes my life what it is today. For quite a while now, I've lived in a world, I believe Buddha best described it as nirvana. And if it's not nirvana, I don't know what else to call it. I mean, just for a lack of a better word, whether it is in fact or not, for me, it certainly feels like it. I hope it'll feel like that for you in a very short time. So, going on. I live in a world that I call nirvana, not to be confused with enlightenment or the end of all suffering. The end of all suffering, for me, as it will be for you, is just the first step. The end of suffering is the first step on your way to nirvana. And there are not many steps to it. It's actually quite simple. Once you understand it and get the hang of it, man, it'll be effortless to live it. It will just like be. It'll be. That's it. You know, for, and by the way, the end of all suffering, first step. That's what many of you will experience, or at the least begin to experience in a major way. Um, Imagine a life where you no longer experience in any way, shape, or form sadness, worry, anger, jealousy, and the biggest one of all, at least it was for me, fear. Absolutely no fear, not even of death. As a matter of fact, I now believe that death is the graduation party of life. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you're never going to have problems in your life or that you're not going to be hurt or upset when someone does something foul to you or that you won't miss someone when they die. What I'm saying to you is that you are no longer going to suffer like you are accustomed to suffering when those things happen in your life. Bear with me, Neil. The answers are coming. Think about it. I'm talking about total inner peace, love at a level like you've never known before. Think about what your life will be, and this is the second step, okay? And what you will do with a life that is overflowing with absolute abundance of freedom, inner peace, joy, love, happiness, appreciation, and gratitude. Gratitude for absolutely everything, okay? And if you and I can have that here and now, regardless of what's going on in our lives, and even regardless, for that matter, of what's going on in the world with these fucked up people running it, not that I'm pointing fingers, it's not their fault. They're just doing what's in their nature to do based on their life experience. And if they are watching this, and I hope they are, they also could very well have a change of heart as well. As I was saying, if we can be truly happy in the state of never ending bliss, regardless of all of it, I can't even begin to imagine what amazing things are in store for us when we check out of this place. Personally, and to those of you who don't understand this yet, this might sound a little morbid. But the fact is, like Socrates, before he drank the hemlock that killed him, I'm genuinely excited about death. I'm looking forward to it, man. Whenever it happens, don't cry for me, man. I'm going home, you know. But in the meanwhile, we're still here. And like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said once, "Hey, yo, buddy, come on, nobody there. Stop it." Like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said once, "I don't care if my death is in vain." It's a quote. All that matters is that my life wasn't lived in vain. You see, it doesn't matter how or when we die. Death of this body is inevitable. All that matters is how and when you live. We're working on the how, and the when is now. I want to make something very clear here that the end of all suffering, of all sadness, worry, anger, jealousy, and fear, and then the subsequent experiencing of total and complete freedom, inner peace, joy, love, happiness, appreciation, and gratitude is just the beginning. That is what you'll come to know as enlightenment. So far, I've found that there are two forms, or rather, two reasons for which I believe we can call it a state of enlightenment. The first form, the first reason is because, in my experience, losing all that suffering was like an entire planet of shit had been lifted off my body. I felt as light as a feather. Me. Light as a feather. Like this grotesque weight had been lifted off of me. And then the beautiful shit showed up. You know, once I experienced the other side of suffering, it was like being strapped to a never ending, fully fueled mega rocket and being blasted off into space. And the beauty, the elation, it just keeps going and going and going and going, and it's never ending. The force of it increasing with every single moment that passes. I thought to myself, holy shit, I'm here. Don't know where the fuck I am, but this is awesome. This is enlightenment. And I thought that it was. I couldn't go any further than that. There was no reason to. Can't get any better. Huh. Was I wrong? Boy, was I wrong. There's something much greater beyond all the suffering and beyond that form of happiness and elation. Hold on a second. Hey, yo, come here, buddy. Here's some bones. Yeah, knock yourself out. Anyway, there's something beyond all the suffering and beyond the form of happiness and elation. And what is beyond that in one word? Content. It is miraculous at how much content fits in a single moment. In a single moment. And there are so many of them on a daily basis. You cannot imagine how many of them there are. People say there's not enough time in a day. Wrong. There is more than enough time in a day. There's time to spare. Okay? You know, I spent a week, like 8 or 9 days with my best friend. You know, he's more than a friend. We call each other brothers from another mother. It's a common saying, like BFFs, you know? I guess, you know, whatever. I'm the godfather to his child. You know, Rocket Man is who I'm talking about if you've read my bio. And I have to tell you that when I was leaving, when I was going back home, man, I looked him in the eye, you know, right before I was ready to take off. I looked him in the eye and I said to him, and when I said to him, I said, yo, Rocket Man, dude, man, I've lived 100 years. Every moment that I was here with you. He looked back at me and he said, I fucking get it, man. You know, and that is the level of relationship that you will share with every single person in your life and with every person that you interact with. I don't care who they are. That is the level of passion, compassion, and love that you will share with everyone. Everyone that you encounter for the rest of your life. I'm just saying that's what it was for me. That's what it is for me. And once you know what I know, chances are, like I said to you before, that there's nothing that having the same resources that I have that you cannot do for yourself. That having the same resources, you wouldn't do for yourself. It is just truly amazing. I mean, can you picture what your life could be when you can literally fit 100 years worth of content in one day? God, it's like being on the precipice of immortality. It's as close as you can get to living 1,000 years in a week. In a week. And not only living 1,000 years in a week, but living them in absolute bliss, harmony, joy, peace, love, passion, compassion. Unfortunately, it is indescribable. I can't tell you what it is. It's not something that I can excuse me, that I can give you over a video. It's something that you have to see with your own eyes. It's something that you have to feel, that you have to experience for yourself to truly understand it. And look, I know, okay, that probably by now some of you are probably saying, and if you're not among the some that I'm talking about, it's good for you to hear this anyway. So some of you are probably saying or have already said to yourselves, great, I get it already. I want it. It sounds great. Enough of telling me what it is. Just get me there already. Tell me how to do it. I'm in. I'm ready. No, you're not ready. Far from it. I know how you feel, though. We all want things here and now. But in response to your request, I have two very important things that I want to say to all of you, by the way, and especially to those of you who are at the point of give it to me already. Listen up. Number one, you've broken our agreement. You have stopped paying attention. You're having a judgment that things are not happening as fast as they should, how you want them to or expect them to, and that is nothing more than an opinion. And if that is the case, I have three words for you. You know what they are. Remember the price. Leave your judgments, opinions, questions, and doubts to the end. And most importantly, follow the requirement. Go back to where you started saying, tell me already, no matter how far back that was. Rewind the video, and I promise you that if you continue to put in the effort like you're doing right now, by the end of our time together, all the treasures that I'm speaking to you about, you'll be able to call your own. If you need a break, no big deal. Take a break. Come back tomorrow. As a matter of fact, take a few days off and get some really good suffering time in. Remember the price. You know, if everything's going okay in your life, create some suffering. Don't do anything drastic or stupid. Don't get locked up or fired from your job unless you really hate your job. In that case, go for it. Fuck it. You'll be all right. So long as you finish the video. But I'm serious. Tell your wife she's fat. Whether she is or not, won't matter. She's getting pissed off either way. More so if it's true. you know? Get on a scale yourself, you fat fuck. Go max out a credit card, then give your husband the bill and say, pay this bitch. You know? Tell your spouse or boyfriend, you know what, that's it, I'm out of here. Then storm out of the house, not say another word, go to the store, get a gallon of milk, come right back, and then pretend like nothing's happened. Believe me, that will stir up a lot of shit. You know? But no matter what you do, should you choose to follow this advice, get back to the video. And if you happen to cause a little suffering in someone else's life, chances are you already do, then good. Because then they need this video too. And this video will be the greatest gift that you can ever give to someone who suffers. I'm serious about that too. And number two, this is for all of you. Have patience. Everything I say and everything I do, I'm doing on purpose. It's part of this process. What you are going to experience will be something like most of you, like the majority of you, have never experienced before. How do I know that? Look around. This realization, this experience you have yet to get is of such a great intensity that for me it was absolutely terrifying. I think it's a fact that I shit my pants. I thought I had lost my fucking mind. Picture this. Every waking moment for virtually my entire life, since I was probably like 5 years old, I suffered an intense mental anguish. Pain and suffering was what I called life. It was the only thing I'd ever known, even in good times. Never a single moment in 36 years was I ever without it. And then, all of a sudden, in an instant, gone. Gone from my body, gone from my soul. And no matter how hard I tried to get it back, and I did, I couldn't do it. Think about it. Put yourself in that position for just a moment. For many of you, I don't have to tell you. You've lived your entire lives, your entire conscious lives in pain, worry, concern, guilt, anger, hatred, jealousy, entitlement. There's a new one. All your life, it is what you know. It is your security blanket. And I'm going to fucking rip it away from you. And you're never going to see it again. Then, at that very moment, when you find yourself without it, the lights are going to go out. You're going to be in the dark, in the middle of fucking nowhere. No GPS, no phone. And then your car stalls. It breaks down and you can't get it started again. And a heartbeat later, you hear the loudest sirens that you've ever heard. And then the very earth beneath you starts shaking with such a violent intensity that it knocks you on your ass. Does that send a chill down your spine? Still think you're ready for it? You don't know it yet. How lucky, how fortunate you are. I did this process on my own. I didn't have anybody to hold my hand through this incredible change. Nobody told me what was coming. I found myself thrown into a world that was completely alien to me. And unless you can say beyond the shadow of a doubt that you no longer suffer in any way, then you don't know what you are headed for. When this change happens for you, mark my words, it's very likely that you will fully understand what I'm talking about, man. That you will fully feel what I felt. I will say it again. Chances are that you will feel the same horrific terror that I felt when you realize that what I am saying to you is the absolute truth. When you realize that all suffering has left your very being, it's gone, and you can't get it back. At the least, you're going to be shaken up quite a bit at that. Why? For the same reason you do when, for example, when you're driving at night. You get off an exit and you find yourself in the dark, lost in the middle of nowhere. Has that ever happened to you? And even worse, when there's no exit, no re-entry to get back on. Being lost in the middle of nowhere, somewhere you've never been. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a bad place, but doesn't necessarily mean you're in a good place either. And God forbid that you don't have a GPS or someone starts waving you down or is trying to make you pull over or starts following you every turn you make. Who knows? I mean, it could just be someone like you who's lost. You're going to get out, stop, and ask them? Most of us, at least when it's happened to me, I'll keep driving. I don't give a shit. I'll keep driving until I run out of gas. I'll keep driving, not knowing where I'm going, rather than to flag someone down in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, and it gets to be real fun has happened. When the paved road turns into a dirt road, and that jerk off is still following me with his brights on. You know, maybe that's never happened to you. This is a fact, though. It is in our nature to be afraid when we find ourselves in a situation that we've never been in before. No matter what, we know. I have traveled all over the country as a truck driver. I have been and I have driven a truck in every state except Alaska and Hawaii. I have driven many miles in Canada too. I have driven my personal vehicles, a motorcycle, and cars literally around this country 4 times. I have estimated that professionally I have driven over 2 million miles in my life. I have driven through snow, sleet, hail, high winds, black ice, and in every possible weather and condition you can think of, right? Let me tell you something. I was in Wisconsin once. It was winter, 30 below. I saw an accident happening 2 miles ahead of me. Cars spinning out, crashing into each other. When my speedometer, I look down, it goes from 25 to 60, 25 to 60. I found out why. I'm driving on ice, black ice. Picture this. You're in a vehicle that weighs 40 tons, 80,000 pounds, and you have 2 miles to stop it. Here's where it gets hairy. Every time you step on the brake, no matter how gentle you do it, you see your trailer in your side view mirrors jackknifing. Now, to stop the jackknifing, you have to let off the brake completely and try again. Mind you, the accident that I told you about is coming up pretty quick. You're still rolling towards it, and you've barely slowed down. Talk about shit in your drawers. Huh. One time I'm on a mountain called Donner's Pass in California. Fully loaded. Again, 80,000 pounds. Going up the mountain, no problem. I'm doing 10 miles an hour. You know, this truck passes me. I see that he's from New York, from Maspeth, Queens, place I know, I'm pretty familiar with. So I get on my CB and I say, "Yo, New York, what's up? Bayside, Queens over here." Which we're neighbors. So we get to talking for a while, and then all of a sudden, man, I realize that I'm no longer going uphill. I'm going downhill, and I'm doing 50 miles an hour. I'm looking at an 8-mile winding 5% downhill grade. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, this is what it means. Have you ever seen those long ramps on the side of a mountain that say truck runaway ramps? The reason those things are there are because, as it was in this particular case, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing, if you are not in full control of your truck, you can lose your brakes and you will be unable to stop. Those ramps are filled with sand, and when you hit them, you sink and therefore you stop. Most truck drivers will try to stop their truck on their own, because using them in some cases can cost as much as $20,000 to pull you out, and it registers as an accident on your license. And to a truck driver, a clean license is his livelihood. So you don't use them unless you absolutely have to. And if it is your fault, meaning it wasn't equipment failure, if it's due to driver negligence that you have to use the runway ramp, you get fired for shit like that. But getting fired for it, for using it, that's the last thing on your mind. The first thing on your mind is that you hope it's empty, first of all. And you're hoping, and if you're hoping that it's empty, chances are that you can't wait for the next one. And if there's another truck already in it, you're praying that that truck was going fast enough when he hit the ramp that he's left you some room. And at that point, using a runaway ramp with a truck already in it, we're talking slim chances of survival. Here's where this story gets hairy. Donner's Pass only has like 2 of them, and they are 3 or 4 miles apart. In a fully loaded truck, as it was in this case, going downhill with no brakes, Within less than a half a mile, you're doing 80 miles an hour. Donner's Pass is a winding mountain with 25-mile-an-hour curves. And there is no side of the mountain going down. There's only something called cliff. No guardrails, just cliff. Oh, God, was I fucking terrified. There's maybe like 8 or 9 feet of shoulder before you go over. Trucks are 8.5 feet wide. There you go. I managed, by the grace of whoever, to stop that truck. And when I did, my brakes were smoking. I mean, another 10, 15, maybe 30 seconds of my foot on that brake at the most. My brakes would have caught fire, and I probably would not be talking to you here today. The moment I came to a stop, I had completely lost my brakes. So I changed my shorts. I had to wait almost 2 hours for my brakes to cool down so that I could be back on my way again. And from that day on, believe me, anytime I went up or down a mountain, my radio's off, my CD's off. Trust me, I pay attention now. That was some pretty scary shit, you know? So for me, point is, driving a car is child's play. It's nothing compared to driving a truck. At least that's what I thought. Okay? Check it out. Rocket Man and I took a cross-country trip in my Lincoln Town Car. We started in New York, ended in New York. 17 days, over 11,000 miles. We met up with a friend of mine, a business associate in California, and he knew someone who owns the only house in Yosemite National Park. It's a ranch, a horse ranch. So he takes us city boys in there, in there. And, we have dinner, we hang out for a while, you know. Then, California guy says to me, he says, yo, you guys better get a move on it. It's starting to get dark. And I say to California, dude, we're going to Vegas. The Nevada state line is only like 30 miles away from here, you know. And he says to me, yeah, dude, but you're talking about 15 miles up that mountain and 15 miles down at night. I say, dude, whatever. But I take his advice and, we leave. Now, I've been up and down the worst of mountains in a truck, no less, in all types of conditions for like 20 years. I've hit 22.5-pound owls. I've hit deers at 70 miles an hour a few times. So I'm not worried, man. It got dark, nothing new. No guardrails, nothing new. We saw mountain lions, we saw fox, we saw what looked like black bears. We hit the peak, 15 or 18,000 feet at the top of the mountain, something like that. My friend was right. I mean, it was a trip, pretty hairy at times too. 30 miles took us over 3 hours. All right. Most of the time we were doing 10, 15 miles an hour. So, but listen, nothing in my life with all my experience had ever had ever prepared me for what was coming next. Okay, so we cross over the Nevada state line, instant flatlands. Okay, I said, oh God, I'm glad that's over with. So here we are, right in the middle of the desert at night, pitch blackout, only the stars for light. Absolutely amazing. It felt like you could just reach out of the window and just grab one. Speed limit 65 miles an hour. I'm just cruising along, looking at the stars. All of a sudden, like 20 minutes into it, all these wild jackrabbits all over the road. All right. We're running over jackrabbits, God rest their soul, every 10 to 15 seconds, It is what it is, All right. So all of a sudden I see a sign. And on this sign is something I've never seen before in all my years of driving. Now, the first thing that you learn in truck driving school, the most important thing that they beat into your head is that you have to read every sign on the road, no matter how big, no matter how small. You have height, width and weight restrictions, axle restrictions. And if you miss even one, you've seen those guys. They're the ones under the bridge with the trailers ripped open like a tuna can. That's a guy who missed one sign, okay? Anyway, it's a way of life for me no matter what I'm driving now. I just can't help but, every single sign, I got to know what it says. I never miss one. And when I'm driving a truck, never. But when I'm driving a car, I relax a little bit. And even so, if I miss by chance even one sign and I'm driving with someone, I'll ask them right away every time, yo, what that sign say? Get it? So, okay. Nevada, middle of the desert, middle of the night, pitch black, beautiful stars, jackrabbits. All of a sudden, a sign I have never seen. The sign says open range. I remember how I freaked out. I said to Rocket Man, yo, what the fuck does open range mean? You know, I'm freaking out. He didn't know, I'll tell you what it means, all right? I found out what it meant when we came up upon a stop sign in the middle of nowhere. All right? No traffic. We hadn't seen a car since we left the range in Yosemite. I came to a full stop, just in case there was a cop hiding in the dark, somewhere. But when I stopped, man, came to that complete stop, I actually stopped there for a minute. There's nobody behind me, nobody in front of me, to the left, to the right, nothing. And I looked at the stop sign for some reason. And right below it, I saw these two huge black eyes staring at me. Talk about being freaked out. I am totally out of my element. you know? So, for all of you city folk like myself, if you ever find yourself in the Nevada desert in the middle of the night and you see a sign that says open range, here is what open range means. It means that cattle, steer, are allowed to roam free on 65-mile-an-hour highways, okay? You know, we are not alone in the dark. All I want is to be in Vegas already, okay? I want this ride to be over. And we are 150, 160 miles away from anything remotely close to civilization. Jackrabbits, no problem. 1,000-pound steers, big problem. I couldn't go faster than 30, 35 miles an hour. It took us over 5 hours to get there. And thankfully, we got there in one piece. If you haven't gotten the point yet, here it is. It doesn't matter what you think you know, or for that matter, how much you actually know when you find yourself in a situation that you have never been in. I'm an experienced professional driver. And that last story, the open range one, I was terrified when I didn't know what open range meant. Once even, okay, ready for this? Even once I knew what it meant, I was still shaking in my seat because I had an idea of what could happen if I hit one of those things, even at 35 miles an hour. But understand something, that this, nothing in my life that I'd ever done or experienced had ever been as terrifying an experience as it was for me when all the pain in my life and all the suffering in my life suddenly just vanished. I'll never forget where I was. I was on Interstate 80 going eastbound, right around the 12-mile marker. All right, just getting into Pennsylvania. I stopped at the first rest area available for trucks where an Evil Knievel motorcycle is on display. And while we'll elaborate on that experience later on, I was there, I couldn't move for like 4 fucking hours. I couldn't move. Scared stiff. I kid you not. I kid you not. It's right up there with staring down the barrel of a gun, which I've done more than a few times in my life. And I got to tell you, man, I was more terrified then than at any other time in my life. And the difference between what I went through and what you will go through is that I was alone. No one to guide me or tell me what was going to happen. And you are not alone on this. So what are you in a rush for? I'm here, right here with you. I'll be with you every step of the way. Every step of the way. So you need not fear it, even though you're going to. But I got through it, and so will you. With what I believe, much less effort. It'll actually be fun to get through it after the initial shock of it. That is what I am preparing you for. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, I get it. It can be scary, so I could handle fear. I've been handling fear all my life. You know? Look, if that's your attitude, then this is what I'm going to say. It's like it's like being right now, most people, anyone who deals with suffering, okay? Even in the smallest way, they are like an institutionalized criminal. Have you ever heard that term? It means that a criminal has spent most of his or her life behind prison walls. I first heard that term in a movie called The Shawshank Redemption. Okay? It starred Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. There's this old man in the movie. His name was Brooks. And Brooks had been in prison pretty much his entire life. All right? He has a parole hearing and they approve his parole. Before he leaves, he flips the fuck out and tries to kill a fellow inmate because he doesn't want to leave prison. That's all he knows. But he doesn't kill the guy. They calm him down and give him a pep talk, so he doesn't have a choice. At this point, they set him free. As he's walking away from the prison, he looks back, and you can see the utter pain in his eyes. In the next scene, he almost gets run over by a car. A car! Something he's never seen before. Never seen one go that fast anyway. The world is not what it used to be. It's an alien place that he's in. He tries to adjust. He gets an apartment and he gets a job at a supermarket as a bag boy, but ultimately he hangs himself. And he carves with his little knife, Brooks was here. You, whether you know it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you agree with it or not, you're in the same place as Brooks. If you suffer, in the same place as Brooks, with only one difference. Instead of hanging himself, he could have killed somebody and he would have been sent back home. You, on the other hand, no matter what you do, there's no prison to be sent back to. The prison is gone for good. It's like that movie, Back to the Future. You get to the future, your time machine blows up, you're stuck. There's no way back. And if by a long shot you haven't seen these movies, look at it this way. You hear this all the time. They say that life has its ups and downs. It's been compared to a roller coaster, the roller coaster of life. Well, let's look closely at that same analogy. Life is a roller coaster because there are some really important points that we miss when we hear that. And they're always left out of the analogy. Life is a roller coaster. Up and down, round and round, happy and sad, good times and bad. One day you're flush with cash, the next day you're broke. You're married today, tomorrow, divorced. Sunshine, rain, pissed off one day, calm the next. You get my point. Now, if you go to an amusement park, you can hear something, usually from the parking lot. And it's quite normal. What do you hear? Come on. Screams. All right? Screams that give you goosebumps, And where are those screams coming from? That's right, the people on the roller coasters. Now, for those of you who are the give it to me already, imagine that. Imagine that same parking lot, but instead, the parking lot is empty and it is dead quiet, middle of the day. There are no sounds happening. Do you still try to get in with your kids? Or do you say, we got to get the fuck out of here? Something's fucking wrong here, Exactly. But no, okay? This parking lot, it's full. People on roller coasters, horrific screams that give you goosebumps. You know who's not screaming? The guy operating the roller coaster. You know that guy. Not that they're all like that, but you know that guy. He's wearing the wife beater, them tank top t-shirts, with tobacco and food stains all over it. He looks like he hasn't showered in 3 months. A cigarette hanging out of his mouth, maybe a half a beer in a plastic cup next to the controls. Does he look stressed? Fuck no. He's having a good old time. He is not only operating, not only controlling the roller coaster, he is calmly observing it, aware of its every move, of where it is at all times. His job is to maintain that roller coaster and keep it in tip top shape, to maintain the operation of every aspect of that ride, to catch problems before they happen, to foresee complications that could potentially arise. Because if he doesn't, the results could be catastrophic. Think about our lives. And look, man, listen to me very carefully. Try to get this. Rewind the video 10 times and hear me say it again. That this lesson right here about this roller coaster guy, operator, is of such incredible importance. Probably the most important thing you can learn here. Matter of fact, when I got this realization, I got it through Sri Ramana Maharshi. In his book, Words of Grace. As a matter of fact, I have a tattoo. Try to show it to you. I hope you can see it. It says, Who am I? In that book, very good essay. He wrote an essay, on self-inquiry. But anyway, after I read his book, Words of Grace, for me, personally, nothing has ever been the same. You will realize soon as we get closer to the end, which, by the way, put on a fresh pair of shorts. Because we're almost there. But you will know, as I do, know, not think, know, how vital, how utterly essential it is to fully understand this concept, this process, this way of operating your roller coaster of life. To get off the roller coaster and operate it. As a matter of fact, until you get this one step right, fuck it. Until you don't even have to get it right, okay? You just have to get it, period. Until you do, this video could be 100 years long and it wouldn't make a difference in your life. None. None. Not a bit of difference until you get this. In the end, you will be a professional roller coaster operator. You will no longer be on the ride. You will be observing it. You will be knowledgeable in the most effective maintenance procedures needed to not only avoid problems before they start, but to crush them completely And if by some rare chance, hey, shit fucking happens, right? All the time. Sometimes we have no control over them. But if or when they occasionally do happen, and that, again, will depend on how good you are at your job. But if they do occasionally happen, the better you are at your job, the less problems will show up. And even if they do show up, like I said, out of our control, you will be prepared to deal with them. You will amaze yourself at how calm you are in an emergency, how strong you are, and not only for yourself, but for everyone around you, for your loved ones who will often come to you for advice, for your calmness and the comfort that you give them that, man, this is fucking nothing. We can handle this attitude, you know? But the icing on the cake, my brothers and sisters, is that you will be able to do that and be that for everyone you meet, for the world and for everyone in it. I kid you not. So, we've come to the end of this video, part 2. In part 3, the change happens. You'll have it. And just to give you a heads up, all right, it's not set in stone. There may be a need for a part 4. I don't know yet. I haven't finished it yet. But we still do have quite a bit to do. It's a lot, but it's worth it. I'm doing my best to give it to you as soon as possible. As soon as possible. So, with that said, namaste. I love you. See you.